thought my life was over. Then I woke up as a teenager. Throwaway account because if anyone connected this story to me, I'd probably be committed. I know this sounds fake. Honestly, if someone else posted this, I'd call it creative writing and move on. But I swear every word of this actually happened. A few months ago, I was a divorced, burnt-out, 36-year-old guy sleeping in my best friend's guest room. A week later, I was back in high school, looking 17, trying to stop my own son from getting bullied, while also preventing my daughter from dating the exact kind of idiot I used to hate. And somehow, those weren't even my biggest problems. For a little context, back in high school, I had everything. I was captain of the basketball team. College scouts were showing up to watch me play. Everyone kept telling me I could go anywhere. NBA? Maybe. A full scholarship? Almost guaranteed. My entire future felt mapped out. I wasn't rich. I wasn't famous. But I genuinely believed life only got better from there. Funny how confident 17-year-olds are. Right before the biggest game of my life, my girlfriend pulled me aside. She had that look. You know, the one. The "we need to talk" look that immediately makes your stomach drop. At first I thought she wanted to break up with me. Instead, she told me she was pregnant. I don't really remember everything after that. It's like my brain just stopped. One second I was standing in a gym with scouts waiting to watch me play. The next, I was staring at the girl I loved, realizing both of our lives had just changed forever. The referee blew the whistle. My coach was yelling for me. The game had started. I had a choice: walk onto that court or follow her. I followed her, without really thinking. At the time, it didn't even feel like a sacrifice. It just felt like the right thing to do. Looking back, that single decision changed literally everything. Fast forward 18 years. Turns out, being the guy who made the responsible choice doesn't magically make you happy. I was stuck in a job I hated. I'd spent almost 2 decades working for the same company because I kept telling myself promotions were just around the corner. Spoiler, they weren't. The morning this story really begins, I stood in front of a bathroom mirror, repeating positive affirmations like some motivational podcast had possessed me. Today's going to be a great day. I love my job. I'm lucky. I sounded so unconvinced that even my own reflection looked embarrassed. Meanwhile, I was living with my best friend Ed. Ed is the kind of guy who believes every weird health trend on the internet. That morning he had thousands of acupuncture needles sticking out of him while drinking something that turned out to be rhinoceros urine. Apparently it was good protein. I'm still trying to forget that conversation happened. He kept telling me today would change my life because I was finally getting promoted. I wanted to believe him. I really did. Instead, my boss called me into his office, looked awkward for about 10 seconds, and handed the promotion to someone who'd worked there for 2 months. His explanation: she had a college degree. I didn't. Apparently 18 years of experience were worth less than 1 diploma. I walked out wondering why I'd spent half my life chasing a career that clearly wasn't chasing me back. Things somehow got worse when I got home. Well, not home. My former home. See, my wife and I had separated. We weren't officially done yet, but we were close enough. I told myself it was because of work, stress, money, life. She had a different opinion. According to her, I'd spent years acting like I'd been robbed of the future I deserved. Like marrying her had ruined my life. Hearing someone you still love say that hurts more than I can explain. Because the worst part, I couldn't honestly tell her she was wrong. I left angry, mostly at myself. Instead of driving anywhere meaningful, I somehow ended up back at my old high school. I wandered into the gym where everything had started. There was a basketball lying on the floor. I picked it up, started dribbling. Muscle memory is weird. For about 30 seconds, I wasn't 36 anymore. I was 17 again. Confident, fast, certain. I even hit one of those imaginary game-winning shots. Then I tried a fancy layup, landed, and immediately threw out my back. Turns out nostalgia has terrible knees. As I was leaving, I stopped in front of an old team photo. There I was, smiling, surrounded by teammates, looking like a guy who thought the whole world belonged to him. An old janitor walked over and asked if I knew anyone in the picture. I pointed at 17-year-old me. Then I made the mistake of saying something I'd been thinking for years. I told him, that kid had everything. And then, just like that, it was all gone. The janitor looked at me for a long second. Then he quoted something about the saddest words in the English language being, "It might have been." At the time I figured he was just an unusually philosophical janitor. I had no idea how weird this story was about to become. That night it started pouring rain. Like, end of the world rain. I was driving home when I saw that same janitor standing on a bridge over the river. He was leaning over the railing, completely still. My first thought? Oh great. Now I have to stop someone from jumping. So I pulled over, ran through the rain, started yelling. By the time I reached the bridge, he was gone. Just gone. No footsteps, no sound, nothing. Then I looked over the railing. The water below was swirling like crazy. Lightning flashed, and for one split second, I didn't see my reflection. I saw my 17-year-old face staring back at me. I actually said, "What the?" And before I could finish, the railing snapped. I fell straight into the river. When I finally crawled out the next morning, I was soaked, covered in mud, missing a shoe, generally having the worst day of my life. I stumbled to Ed's house and started pounding on the door. He opened it, looked at me, screamed, then slammed the door in my face. Not exactly the warm welcome I was hoping for. I kept yelling that it was me. Eventually he opened the door again. Very slowly. He just kept staring. Then he handed me a mirror. I looked down first. My suit didn't fit anymore. My hands looked younger. My skin. No wrinkles. No gray hair. I lifted the mirror and nearly had a heart attack. I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't hallucinating. I was 17 again. At first I thought this had to be some elaborate prank. Then I realized something much worse. Nobody would believe me. Not my wife. Not my kids. Not anyone. Except maybe Ed. Unfortunately, Ed's first reaction was trying to figure out whether I'd been cursed by Satan. Which, surprisingly, wasn't the dumbest theory we'd hear that week. I wish I could say becoming 17 again solved all my problems. Didn't, because the first time I went back to my old high school, I found my son hanging from a bathroom stall by his underwear. And that's when I realized I hadn't gone back to relive my own teenage years. I was there to witness the childhood I'd completely missed. So, imagine waking up looking 17 again. Cool, right? Wrong. Because mentally, I was still a 36-year-old man whose lower back made weird noises every time I stood up too fast. The body was 17. The warranty on my soul had definitely expired. Ed, being the only person who actually believed I was me, immediately started treating the situation like we'd won the lottery. He wasn't concerned. He was excited. He started throwing out ideas like we were pitching movie scripts. You can go pro now. You can fix all your mistakes. You can become rich. Meanwhile, I was standing in his kitchen asking the far more important question. How exactly am I supposed to explain this to my kids? We spent hours trying to come up with a plan. Every single one sounded insane. Eventually, Ed looked at me and said, "What if you just enroll in school?" I laughed. He didn't. That's when I realized he was serious. A week later, I had a fake transcript, a fake birth certificate, a fake name. Apparently, if you know enough computer hackers who still live with their parents, paperwork isn't as difficult as you'd think. So, congratulations to me. I was officially a 17-year-old transfer student. Again, walking back into my old high school was surreal. Everything looked exactly the same. The lockers, the classrooms, even that weird smell every school somehow has. Except this time, everyone looked like children. Because they were. It was honestly disturbing. Then I remembered, technically I looked exactly like them, which somehow made it worse. The principal welcomed me like every principal welcomes a transfer student. 5 minutes of fake enthusiasm. 3 hours of paperwork. A speech about responsibility. Then I got my class schedule. I stared at one particular name. Alex O'Donnell. My son. Same school. Same classes. Same hallway. I suddenly realized I was about to spend every day pretending not to know my own kid. Nobody prepares you for that. I spotted him before he noticed me. And it hurt. More than I expected. See, in my head, Alex was still 10 years old. Running around the backyard with a basketball almost bigger than he was. Instead, I saw this quiet teenager trying to make himself invisible. His shoulders were slumped. His backpack looked like it weighed 50 pounds. Every few steps he glanced over his shoulder. Like he was waiting for something bad to happen. That wasn't my son. At least, not the one I remembered. Then I found out why. A couple of guys cornered him in the hallway. One grabbed his books. Another shoved him into a locker. The whole hallway watched. Nobody did anything. Alex didn't even fight back. He just stood there. Like he'd accepted this was normal. I felt something snap inside me. Not literally. Although, given my age, that was always a possibility. Emotionally. Before I could think better of it, I walked over. One of the bullies looked at me and smirked. Big mistake. He asked if I had a problem. I said, "Yeah. My problem is you clearly confuse being bigger with being impressive." The hallway went quiet. He shoved me. Again, big mistake. Because unlike actual 17-year-olds, I'd spent 18 years lifting toddlers, carrying furniture, fixing things around the house, and hauling groceries in one trip to avoid making two. Dad's strength is real. I barely moved. He looked confused. Then he swung at me. I stepped aside without even thinking. Years of adult reflexes beat teenage aggression every single time. A teacher showed up before things got worse. Probably for the best. Because I was dangerously close to forgetting I wasn't actually 17 anymore. Alex didn't thank me. He just looked confused. Honestly, I probably have reacted the same way. Imagine getting rescued by some random transfer student who acts like your disappointed father. Weird. Very weird. Then came basketball tryouts. Now, I had absolutely no intention of joining the team. I was there to keep an eye on my kids. That was it. Simple plan. Unfortunately, coach had other ideas. He watched me shoot exactly once, then handed me a jersey before I could object. Apparently muscle memory doesn't disappear with magical age regression. Who knew? The first practice was humbling. Not because I was bad. Actually, I was accidentally incredible. Turns out 18 years of adult coordination inside a teenage athlete is kind of unfair. No, the hard part was pretending not to know everything. I had to miss shots on purpose. Pretend I didn't understand plays. Act surprised by drills I'd literally practiced in the same gym 18 years earlier. It's surprisingly difficult to fake being average, especially when your body keeps reminding you it used to be really good at this. Coach pulled me aside afterward. He asked where I'd learned to play. I almost said, "Here, with you." In 1989. Instead, I made something up about moving around a lot. Lying gets exhausting, fast. Things got even stranger when I met my daughter's boyfriend. Or, more accurately, the guy she thought was boyfriend material. Stan, captain of the basketball team, popular, confident, the kind of guy who thinks being loud automatically makes him funny. Looking at him was like looking into a time machine, because I knew exactly who he reminded me of. Me, 17. And honestly, I hated it. Not because he was confident, because I suddenly realized how unbelievably annoying confident teenage boys actually are. If I was anything like him, I'd like to apologize to everyone I ever met. Maggie, my daughter, absolutely adored him. Every time he walked by, she'd smile. He barely acknowledged she existed unless his teammates were watching. As her father, it took every ounce of self-control not to launch him into a locker. As her classmate, I had to smile and pretend I didn't care. That might have been harder. Then something happened that completely changed my priorities. Alex tried out for basketball. I already knew he loved the game. I'd bought him his first ball. Spent years telling everyone he'd eventually be better than me. What I didn't know was that he'd completely stopped believing in himself. During practice he froze, second-guessed every pass, apologized after every mistake. Coach barely looked at him. Stan made sure everyone noticed. The whole team laughed. Alex laughed too. You know, that fake laugh people do when they're trying to convince everyone they're not hurt. That one. I hated that laugh, because I'd heard it before. Usually after I'd missed another one of his games because of work. That night, couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything I'd missed. School plays, basketball practices, conversations, birthdays. I always told myself I was working for my family. But somewhere along the way, I'd stopped actually being with my family. That realization hurt a lot more than turning 17 ever did. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't here to relive high school. I wasn't here to become popular. I wasn't here to rewrite my own past. I was here to help my kids, even if they could never know who I really was. And if that meant pretending to be their weird new friend, that's exactly what I was going to do. Unfortunately, high school had other plans, because before I could help fix my son's confidence, I accidentally became the most popular guy on campus. And trust me, that created problems I never saw coming. So, apparently, going back to high school with the mind of a 36-year-old has one unexpected side effect. You're really, really good at being a teenager. Not because you remember everything, because you've already made every dumb mistake once. Within a couple of weeks, people actually knew who I was. The transfer kid, the new basketball star, the guy who somehow wasn't afraid of Stan. I wasn't trying to become popular. Honestly, I was trying to stay invisible. But once you start scoring 30 points in practice and calling out bullies, apparently anonymity isn't an option anymore. Coach started building plays around me. Teachers liked me because I actually did my homework. Imagine that. Turns out paying taxes for 18 years makes algebra feel significantly less intimidating. I finished assignments before everyone else. My English teacher thought I was gifted. No, I just spent almost 2 decades writing emails to corporate managers. Compared to that, Shakespeare was practically a vacation. The weirdest part was becoming friends with my own son. At first, Alex barely spoke to me, which honestly tracked. If some random new kid suddenly started defending me every day, I'd be suspicious too. But eventually, he opened up. A little. We started eating lunch together. Mostly because everyone else had somewhere to be. He'd sit there picking at his food while I tried desperately not to sound like, well, his dad. I'd ask normal questions. So, what are you into? Basketball, video games, photography. Nothing groundbreaking. But every answer made me realize something. I didn't actually know him anymore. Not really. I knew the little boy who wanted me to read bedtime stories. I didn't know this version. And somehow, that hurt more than anything else. One afternoon, I caught him staring at the basketball court after practice. He kept watching the varsity team, never stepping onto the floor, just watching. I walked over and asked why. He shrugged, said guys like Stan were on the team. Like that explained everything. And honestly, it did. Because I'd met 100 Stans in my life. People who convince everyone else they're not good enough. The sad part? Eventually you start believing them. So I made it my mission to annoy my son into believing in himself. Every day, little comments. Nice shot. You should have taken that layup. You passed too much. He'd roll his eyes, tell me to leave him alone. Then, the next day, he'd try a little harder. Progress. Meanwhile, my daughter Maggie was heading straight toward disaster. She was completely obsessed with Stan. And Stan was exactly the kind of teenage boy I would have grounded if I'd actually looked old enough to be her father. He flirted with every girl, ignored her in public, only paid attention when it benefited him. Basically, walking red flags wearing a varsity jacket. The problem was, she couldn't see any of it. Because when you're 16, confidence looks a lot like maturity. It isn't. Trust me, I've been both. I kept trying to warn her. Subtly, I casually ask, "So, what exactly do you like about him?" She'd sigh dramatically, say I wouldn't understand, which was hilarious, because I understood him better than anyone in that school. I was him once. That's the scary part. Then came one of the most awkward moments of my entire life. The girls at school started flirting with me, constantly. Now, before anyone gets the wrong idea, my brain was still 36. So every time some teenager smiled at me, my immediate reaction was panic. One girl asked if I wanted to go out sometime. I nearly responded with, "I'm old enough to explain mortgage interest rates." Instead, I awkwardly mumbled something about being busy and practically sprinted away. The entire experience was deeply uncomfortable. I thought it was hilarious. Of course he did. Speaking of Ed, he fully embraced this whole situation. Started dressing me in expensive clothes. Bought me a sports car. Kept saying things like, "This is your second chance." No, this was my midlife crisis with better skin. There's a difference. Then something happened I genuinely wasn't prepared for. I started spending time with my wife again. Not as her husband. As a teenager she'd never met. Which sounds every bit as weird as it felt. She worked at the school. Our conversations started small. She asked how classes were going. I complained about homework. She laughed. I'd forgotten how much I missed hearing that laugh. The hardest part was knowing everything about her. While she knew absolutely nothing about me, she'd tell me stories about her marriage. About how lonely she'd felt. How she'd waited for her husband to notice she wasn't happy anymore. Every sentence felt like someone twisting a knife. Because she wasn't talking about some stranger. She was talking about me. And I couldn't even defend myself. Because she was right. I had been physically present. But emotionally, I checked out years ago. One afternoon she admitted something that absolutely destroyed me. She said she didn't think her husband ever saw her anymore. Not really. He saw responsibilities, bills, schedules, dinner, laundry, but not her. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I loved her, that I'd always loved her. Instead, I just sat there, because if I'd actually shown her, she would have already known. Love isn't something you explain after 18 years. It's something you're supposed to notice while it's happening. I hadn't. Meanwhile, basketball season was in full swing. Coach made me team captain. Stan didn't take that well. See, people like Stan are perfectly happy being confident. Right up until someone else is better. Then suddenly confidence becomes insecurity. He started challenging me constantly. Practice, games, hallways. Every conversation somehow became a competition. Honestly, it was exhausting. Being 36 meant I knew exactly where all this ended. Usually with someone doing something unbelievably stupid. I was right. The school announced the biggest game of the season. Scouts would be there. The gym would be packed. Everyone was treating it like the end of the world. The second I heard that, my stomach dropped. Because 18 years earlier, another biggest game of my life had changed everything. I wasn't about to let history repeat itself. Not for my son. Not for anyone. But just when I thought I finally understood why I'd been given this impossible second chance, something happened that made me question everything. Because my wife started looking at me differently. Not like a student. Not like a kid. Like someone she genuinely connected with. And suddenly, the one thing I'd never even considered became the biggest problem of all. How do you save your marriage when your wife has absolutely no idea? She's talking to her own husband. So, remember how I said my wife had started talking to me? Yeah. That somehow became the most emotionally confusing part of this entire nightmare. Not because anything inappropriate happened. Nothing like that. It was because she talked to me the way she used to talk to me. The version of me that had disappeared somewhere between work, bills, and 18 years of routine. She'd ask how my day was. Actually wait for the answer. Smile. Laugh. Listen. It hit me one afternoon that we were having better conversations as complete strangers than we'd had as husband and wife in years. That realization hurt. A lot. Because the problem had never been that we'd fallen out of love. The problem was that somewhere along the way, I'd stopped paying attention. Meanwhile, my mission to help Alex was finally starting to work. Little by little, he stopped hiding. He started taking shots instead of immediately passing the ball. Started talking more. Even joked around occasionally. One day after practice, he made this incredible play. Nothing flashy. Just confident. The team actually cheered. I looked over and saw him smiling. A real smile. Not that fake one he'd worn every time someone made fun of him. And honestly, I was embarrassingly proud. I wanted to tell everyone, "That's my son." Instead, I had to settle for a quiet, "Nice job." He grinned. That was enough. Unfortunately, Stan had noticed Alex changing too. Bullies hate confidence. It's bad for business. He doubled down. Started humiliating Alex whenever he got the chance. One afternoon, he shoved him in front of the whole team. I saw Alex clench his fists. For one terrifying second, I thought he was going to swing. Instead, he looked at me. I gave him the tiniest shake of my head. He took a breath and walked away. That was harder than throwing a punch. I don't think he even realized it. Then came the biggest basketball game of the season. The gym was packed. Students screaming. Parents recording everything on camcorders. The kind of atmosphere that makes teenagers think the outcome will determine the rest of their lives. I used to think that too. Now, I knew better. There are much bigger games waiting after high school. Coach gave one of those inspirational speeches coaches always give. Something about legacy, heart, destiny, the usual. Then he looked at me. Lead them. Funny. 18 years ago, I would have loved hearing that. Now, all I could think was, please don't let anyone get hurt. The game started. And honestly, we were terrible. Turnovers. Missed shots. Stan kept trying to play hero ball. Nobody trusted anybody. At halftime, we were getting destroyed. The locker room was dead silent. Coach started yelling. I stopped him. Not because I thought I knew better. Because I did. I'd spent 18 years leading people at work. Motivating teammates. Solving problems. Teenagers don't need another person screaming at them. They need someone who believes they can fix it. So I looked around the room. Then I looked directly at Alex. And I told everyone, basketball isn't about proving you're the best player. It's about making the people around you better. Funny enough, I wasn't really talking about basketball anymore. Second half, everything changed. Guys actually started passing, helping each other, playing like a team. Alex stopped hiding in the corner. He started cutting toward the basket, calling for the ball, taking chances. Every possession he looked more confident. It was incredible to watch. Not because he was suddenly the best player, because he finally believed he belonged there. Then came the final minute. Tie game. Everyone expected me to take the last shot. Coach called the play for me. The defense expected it too. I looked at Alex. He was wide open. For just a second, our eyes met. And I knew. This wasn't my moment. It never had been. I passed him the ball. Time slowed down. He hesitated. Exactly like he always used to. Then, he remembered who he was. He shot. Swish. Game over. The gym exploded. Alex just stood there looking shocked while the rest of the team tackled him. I don't think I've ever been happier after not taking a game-winning shot. After the celebration, I quietly slipped away, because I finally understood why I'd been given this impossible second chance. It wasn't to fix my past. It was to become the father I should have been all along. But life apparently wasn't done testing me, because while everyone celebrated, my wife found something. My old wedding ring, the one I'd been carrying around the whole time. She stared at it, then at me, then back at the ring. I watched the realization slowly spread across her face. She whispered my name, not my fake one, my real one. I didn't answer, couldn't. There wasn't anything left to say. That night, I drove back to the same bridge where everything had started. Rain again, of course. Apparently magical life lessons have a weather budget. The mysterious janitor was standing there, exactly where I'd first seen him. He smiled, like he'd been expecting me. I asked him the obvious question. Why me? He just shrugged, then said something I'll probably never forget. Sometimes people don't need a second chance at life. They need a second chance to appreciate the life they already had. Before I could ask anything else, lightning flashed. I closed my eyes for half a second. When I opened them, he was gone. Again. Honestly, at that point I wasn't even surprised anymore. The next morning, I woke up. Everything felt different. My back hurt again. My knees cracked. My hands looked older. I ran to the bathroom. Gray hairs. Wrinkles. 36. I had my old face back. I have never been so happy to look exhausted. There was only one thing left to do. I drove straight to my wife's house. No speeches. No excuses. No blaming work. No blaming life. I just apologized. For everything. For missing birthdays. For choosing meetings over family dinners. For making her feel invisible. For spending years acting like my biggest regret was becoming a husband and father, when the real regret should have been not appreciating them enough. She didn't forgive me immediately. Honestly, she shouldn't have. Trust doesn't magically come back overnight. I knew that now. But she listened. Really listened. And this time, so did I. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. My job was still a mess. Bills still existed. My knees still sounded like bubble wrap every morning. But I started showing up. To Alex's games. To Maggie's conversations. To dinner. To my marriage. Not physically. I'd always been physically there. Mentally. Emotionally. Completely. Turns out, that's what my family needed all along. Not a younger version of me. Just the real me. So, Reddit, has anyone else ever spent years chasing the life they thought they wanted, only to realize they already had the one that mattered? Because if I learned anything from all this, it's that regret is a really dangerous place to live. You spend so much time wondering what could have been, that you completely miss what's right in front of you. And trust me, if some magical janitor ever offers you a second chance, don't use it to rewrite your past. Use it to appreciate your present. Clapperboard movie reveal. This story was actually the plot of 17 Again. Could you guess the movie before the reveal? If you enjoyed this Reddit-style movie retelling, subscribe to Nerifile and comment which movie you'd like me to rewrite next, or suggest an alternate ending, and it might become the next video.